This is Extra Paycheck Podcast, episode number 63.
You're listening to Extra Paycheck Podcast, where you will learn how to build and grow your own successful online business. Now, here's your host, Alex Soul.
Welcome to yet another episode of Extra Paycheck Podcast. This is episode number 63, and this week's special guest is Dom Wells from Human Proof Designs. Really cool episode I've had of you guys, so make sure to listen to it entirely. Enjoy today's show. Hi Dom, and welcome to the Extra Paycheck Podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Please tell us a little bit more about yourself and what is that you do as a business.
So I am the owner of Human Proof Designs. We create done-for-you niche websites and also provide articles and other SEO services to supplement those websites.
Mm-hmm. And how did you come up with the idea of creating these kind of websites and actually offering them to people?
I was already creating them for myself back in 2012. And in 2013, I noticed that a lot of people were offering similar kind of services via websites like Flippin. But I realized a lot of those websites that were being sold were basically junk. If you're familiar with Flippin, you'll know there's some great businesses you can buy on there, but there's also a lot of junk that has no value, particularly at the lower end. So I thought, why don't I start offering websites that actually have quality, but they're not superly high priced, so beginners can really learn how to use them.
Mm-hmm. Makes a lot of sense. And Flippa is something that you have to be careful with. I know I've never bought a website there. I was thinking of buying some, and every time I did my research, I was like, there's no way this website, let's say the income stats are real, or there's no way this is viable. And I've sold some websites through Flippa as well, just because I got tired of them and it was too much work for the money that it was making. So I just got rid of them through Flippa, which was I think a good idea for me. But buying them, is a different story. And do you sell your websites through Flippa now, or?
No, not anymore. I did start out there. I think I managed to sell my first website on there for $1,000 once upon a time, but that was a website that was actually already getting a lot of traffic and making a bit of money. And then when I first started Human Proof Designs, Flip is where I went to, but I realized I was just basically positioning myself alongside all the other people that were selling junk, and people were looking at these junk sellers who were making all these crazy claims like make $1 million in a week on autopilot. Yeah. And then me saying, work hard and this site might make you some money. And I realized that probably wasn't the best platform for me. So I just moved everything to my website and started from there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And can you tell us a little bit more about this whole niche websites? That's what you call them. What is a niche website and why would people want one?
A niche is basically a topic, but like a narrow subtopic. So if you think of a broad category like fishing, mm-hmm. and then you go narrower like trout fishing, and then maybe you could go even narrower like trout fishing in the Pacific or something like that. And then, you can even go even narrower than that. So generally, it's better to have a website which just sticks to one topic, because then Google can see you're an expert and your users can see you're an expert. And so if you want to make money online, it's a niche website is basically the way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And I ask you this question because I've been doing niche websites for quite a while now, and that's what got me into internet marketing. That was the very first venture. And so the next question, natural question, is I built my own websites, my own niche websites, and a lot of people do as well. That's the kind of a beauty of it, because you're starting from scratch and you're doing everything yourself. You're picking your niche, you're building your content. And the biggest beauty of it all to me was that I could start without any money at all, or maybe $20, $30 for a domain name and hosting, stuff like that. So why do people buy these websites pre-made when they could make them themselves? What do you think is the reason for that?
There are several reasons, but most people, it's because they want to get a head start on the learning curve. If you remember when you first built your first websites, just getting your head around WordPress was difficult. And then you had to think, what's the difference between a page and a post, and how do I make my image not blurry, and all of these things. And then once you've spent, maybe 6 months figuring that out, you then have to think, okay, how do I actually rank this thing? So we're just giving people like a jump start. So they go from, how do I build this thing? Well, they actually start, they don't even have to think about their niche, really. They just think, okay, I can have a niche started already, and I can have the website started already, and now all I need to learn is how to kind of make that website successful.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I know a lot of people could spend 6 months, a year in some online community where they get help or advice from people, even like Facebook groups. You see the same people come up to Facebook groups, and they're all pumped up and excited about starting their online business, especially when it comes to like an affiliate niche website, right? And then you notice 6 months, a year later, the same person saying, okay, so I'm about ready to start my website. I just have these few questions. And you realize that this person has not done anything productive in a year because they've been breaking their head with trying to decide a good niche, something that, and it doesn't have to be, when you decide a niche, you never know how profitable it's going to be and how fast you'll make money, because that's not even the biggest problem. I think you could make money with any niche pretty much. It's how you do your marketing, it's how much work you put in, it's how well you understand what you're doing. But for a lot of people, they don't even get that far. They just spend all their time thinking, what is a good niche? What will make me money? And in my opinion, honestly, I think just go to Amazon, look at any product that is being sold on Amazon, that could be a niche, because, it's being sold. That means people are buying it. So you could make money with it, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much how we start doing our research for the sites that we sell. We start out with Amazon, and then obviously we have a checklist and various other things we look at to confirm which niches might be better than others, because Kindle is selling well on Amazon, but I wouldn't really recommend people to start a website about Kindle. So
yeah,
you do have to do other stuff, but yeah, I mean, your example is a pretty good way to get niche ideas.
Mm-hmm. All right, Dom. So I'd like to go back a little bit in your personal business career. The human proof designs is not something that you've been doing since you were born. You probably, like most of us, at some point had a job and didn't have a business. How did that jump happen? What led you to starting your own business?
I guess I can trace it back to 2008 when I'd been working for about 2 years, graduated in 2006, and didn't really want to be a bartender anymore. I had a degree, but, it's not always, you don't walk into a great job. So I decided I wanted to go teach abroad for 1 or maybe 2 years. I went to Taiwan, got a job as an English teacher, and then 4 years later I was still there, but I was thinking, maybe I want to stay in Taiwan. I like my life. I had a Taiwanese girlfriend who is now my wife. But I kind of was getting a bit burnt out teaching, and I also realized that the ceiling's very low. So I was making about 1,500 US a month, which is pretty good in Taiwan. So I was saving maybe 500 a month. But I realized if I wanted to stay doing that for 10 years, it was going to be the same. There's only, most of these jobs, you work 20 or 30 hours a week, and you maybe make $20 US an hour, but you're not going to ever get promoted. You're not ever going to be able to make 4,000 or 5,000 a month. So I thought to myself, I've got all this extra time, but I can't really get any extra jobs. I don't really... I'm not fluent in Mandarin, and it's not really easy, so I kind of just ended up looking online, and that was the spark for me to try something online.
That's very interesting. And well, I guess you found a few things that you wanted to do. You started trying things online. And so let's fast forward then from then to the point where you quit working and you've decided that you're not going to have a job, you're going to make a living online. I don't know if that moment came to you when you were already making enough money to support yourself from online or not, but when was that moment and how did it happen in your case?
I think you get what you wish for. And for about 6 months after I started Human Proof Designs, I was still working as a teacher, but I was becoming more and more unhappy as a teacher. My school was becoming less successful, so I was getting fewer classes, and my boss kind of was thinking about retirement, so she didn't really care about naughty students. And anyway, long story short, when I was only making about $600 a month online, my school shut down because the boss decided to retire. And I was kind of at a crossroads because I thought what I want to do is make money online full time, but $600 is not quite enough to support me. I don't want to go to a new school because I felt like that was a step back. And then I don't know what happened, but basically a couple of my existing students said to me, well, why don't you just tutor us at our home and we'll pay you double, because they're not paying the school anymore. So I was making more money, they were paying less. And that meant that I had all the freedom I wanted to be able to work pretty much full-time online, but I was able to pay the bills until my online income could catch up. So the reason I say you get what you wish for is because for like 6 months I was thinking, I can't wait till I can do this online, I can't wait till I can do this online, but when am I ever going to be able to quit? And then suddenly the universe went, well, we'll just take your job away from you then. And I was thinking, hold on, I'm not ready yet. But I think without that moment, I probably wouldn't have ever, it may have taken me 2 years to get to the level I got to.
Oh, that is very crazy that life actually pushed you into it. Like you said, yeah, you get what you wish for. That's actually, I guess in your case, it's a good thing that happened. Yeah,
definitely. I'm not sure if it felt that way at the time, though.
Yeah, for sure. It could be very stressful. And I guess, yeah, you were still abroad then. And what was your plan when you started, when you were like, okay, I'm going to make this thing online work? Were you planning to stay abroad for like forever or for a long time? Or were you still thinking, I'm going to go back home to England somewhere?
I wasn't really sure, but I just knew that I wanted to have the option, because I felt like maybe I want to move back to England, but if I move back to England and I'm only making $500 a month online, that's not going to get me very far.
Yeah.
So wouldn't it be great if I could move back to England and I was earning $5,000 a month or even more? So I wasn't sure, do I want to stay in Taiwan? Do I want to go back to England? Does my then girlfriend want to come with me? Do I want to stay in Taiwan for the rest of my life? But I liked the idea of just being able to say, well, why can't I spend 6 months in England, 6 months in Taiwan, or something like that? I wanted to have that option.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. All right, so let's move back to the Human Proof Designs. How are you promoting it? Because that's, I think, one of the biggest issues that we have as marketers is, well, pretty much any business owner or entrepreneur. Having your website and offering your service is a great idea. That's all good. But how do you get the word around? How do you get people hearing about your business and buying your products or your services?
A lot of it now actually kind of takes place without me doing anything, because I've spent the last 2 or 3 years doing the kind of marketing, which I'll explain in a second. But it's kind of got to the point now where word of mouth or other customers or other bloggers or people like you interview me for podcasts, for example. So it all just kind of takes care of itself now, and people are linking to me and referring people to me all the time. Getting to this stage was more difficult. When I started out, I was basically just blogging. I think I did that for 6 months, and I think when it wasn't really working, I thought to myself, I'll just do it for 4 times a week instead of 3 times a week. You know, I think a lot of us think, oh, I'm just not blogging enough.
Yeah.
Or I need to find better keywords. And I think really the deal breaker, or the thing that kind of suddenly catapulted my success, was when I started connecting with other bloggers. I remember one day I decided to do a review on Flipper because I thought, you know, I've got my beef with Flipper.
Yeah.
Actually, my issue's not so much with Flipper, but with the people selling on Flipper. But anyway, I did a review on Flipper and I said what we said earlier, like, yeah, Flipper's okay, but a lot of the stuff sucks. Buy from me instead. That was my kind of angle.
Yeah.
And Justin from Empire Flippers left a comment on my site, and that was the first time I'd ever had a comment from someone that I knew was like a personality, not just a random person.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, I agree. And because Empire Flippers are another marketplace, he was kind of saying, yeah, I agree. You can check us out instead. And anyway, I got really excited and I decided, okay, I've got to jump on this. So I then went to his Flipper review and left a comment and continued the dialogue. And then I basically emailed him and said, hey, maybe like, you know, you cater to people who want to buy established, expensive websites. I cater to people who want to get started. Maybe, you know, maybe there's something here. Maybe you can promote me or something. And yeah, I mean, long story short, that's what happened. He added me to his autoresponder, saying, oh, if you're interested in a starter site, go check out Dom. And he's mentioned me a couple of times on his podcast. And that's kind of made me realize, oh, wow, I just need to do more of this. So then I just started contacting other bloggers, and it didn't always go that smoothly. Some people, you know, like I think I messaged Pat Flynn, and that wasn't going to go anywhere because I was too small, and he gets like 1 million messages like this a day. But yeah, some bloggers started to listen to me, and they started to say, actually, yeah, I like what you're doing, and they recommended me to their audiences. A lot of them had Facebook groups, so I joined their Facebook groups, and I wasn't promoting myself, but I started adding value to the groups and answering people's questions, and then the group owners would promote me because someone would say, do you know anybody that does these sites? And they'd say, yeah, Dom does. And then I started getting more guest posts and more people mentioning me, and you know, and then it gets to the point where now it takes care of itself.
Yeah, that's actually pretty awesome. And you know, a lot of online marketers really fail on this because, well, online marketing is a lonely place, right? We are all solopreneurs who work behind their screen at home, so we don't get to hang out with people, we don't get to communicate with them. And I think that fact makes our promotion a lot harder in our marketing because we're not getting the word around about ourselves, and we forget, for some reason, a lot of us forget that you could still network and connect with people online. It doesn't have to be an offline kind of meeting in order to meet new people and you know, explain what you do and help them promote their business. That's kind of give and take world. But I think it's super important to do that online, and I failed with that for years and years. It's just recently that I started out reaching out to people, and this podcast being one of the ways how I get to know entrepreneurs in different spheres. I know many of them I will never collaborate with them because we just live in different worlds and they promote products like very different from mine. But it's still nice to get in touch with those people, to communicate with them, and to meet new people. And a lot of these meetings, let's say, or connections could grow into something more interesting, profitable in a partnership, or simply, as you mentioned, somebody mentioning you to their audience, knowing that their audience would really appreciate using a service such as yours.
Yeah, and I think another thing a lot of people struggle with is what John Lee Dumas calls the Imposter Syndrome. I don't know if he invented this term, but he certainly introduced it to me. And for those of you who don't know it, it's basically this kind of fear that you're not good enough. Mm-hmm. And maybe if I hadn't kind of got lucky with one of my first encounters, I would have struggled for another 6 months. People, sometimes I feel like I'm hitting my head against the wall because I say to people, you need to do more outreach, you need to get in touch with people. And they say, who's going to want to link to me? Who's going to want to let me guest post? Who, you know, my site's just about this. It's not, yeah. And I just feel like, well, if that's really the case, then you probably should improve your content, right?
Exactly.
But actually, 9 times out of 10, it's not the case. It's just fear. And I think certainly in some niches as well, the only people who are in your niche are in exactly the same boat as you. So if you reach out to them, not only are you kind of being brave and confident, but they're probably going to think, wow, cool, someone reached out to me, and like I've got a new e-friend, you know?
Yeah.
So depending on what niche you're in, I think it's easier or not, or more difficult, but definitely that's just a kind of like a mental thing that people need to just get through and realize that it's not really true.
Yeah, I guess. And I know what you're talking about because, as you said, I've had that imposter syndrome for a very long time and I think something very similar happened to me, that on some of my blog posts or on one of my tweets, somebody that I knew was a like bigger online personality, somebody commented or retweeted. I don't remember exactly what happened. I just remember that it did happen, and I was like, well, those guys are real people, and they actually do spend time on Twitter, and they do Google and research stuff. It's not just for us, the smaller guys, right? Everybody does that, and if they leave a comment, if you wrote something or created something that grabbed their attention, even for a few seconds, for one small comment, it gives you a bigger push, I guess. For me, it gave me a lot more confidence. I was like, well, maybe my stuff is a lot better than I think it is.
Oh, it's huge. I remember there were certainly times, as recently as the beginning of last year, there were times when no emails come in to my inbox, or they come in, but maybe not the emails I want to receive. And I just feel like, oh, no one's bought from me recently, or, you know, you're wallowing in self-doubt, and you wake up in the morning and you feel a bit depressed. And then all that happens is one person sends you an email like, hey, I really like your thing, or one person comments on something, or they tweet you, or they just, even, you know, sometimes they like your tweet, and it lifts you up so much that you basically power through. And then next time you feel down, you can kind of remember that previous one, and then like it's kind of building this kind of confidence bank for you, and eventually it gets to the point where you don't need these because you know that you have something of value.
Yeah, totally. Now all you have to do is just get on the Gary Vee show or something with your website. I think that's going to be a big push forward.
Yeah, and I think that's actually an interesting point as well, because if someone is listening to this and they think, right, I'm going to get on with outreach, I would say, you know, don't shoot for the moon straight away. You know, kind of maybe contact people with a similar sized audience as you, or one step higher than you, or even one step lower. Don't think, you know, I'm going to contact the biggest influencer in my niche, and then, because they're going to shoot you down. And even if they think your content's good and maybe they would feature you, if you haven't been around long enough and nobody else is featuring you, they don't want to look like, you know, they don't want to look stupid by interviewing you on their podcast, and a week later you quit.
Exactly. So
you kind of have to earn your way up to the... Yeah,
true. And one of the good strategies that I've heard about is, let's say you look up your biggest influencer that you want to interact with. So what you have to do is find out who he hangs out with on a daily basis, who he interacts with, who are, on much smaller level than he is, right? And you interact with those people first. And you build a relationship with them. And eventually that person, the big influencer, is going to come up in the conversation. And eventually that person will tell you, no, you should reach out to him. He's a down-to-earth guy. He will help you out. And when you send that email finally to the big influencer, you could mention, hey, David recommended that I get in touch with you. And that breaks the ice so much. This helps so much that you're not just cold calling or cold emailing them. You're actually coming from someone who they know personally, who recommended you get in touch with them. I think that's a great strategy.
That is. And what if you could even say, hey, David, can you write me an introductory email? And I've had that happen a few times.
That's the next level.
Yeah, well, I think that's almost easier, because then at least David is standing behind you and it's almost David's idea, and you're saying, oh, you want to introduce me to him, David? Well, okay.
Yeah, that's actually that's great. All right, Dom. So I have another question for you, and that's a hard one. A lot of people struggle with this one. Have you had a really dark moment while building your online business when you got discouraged and you thought, you know what, this might not work out as well as I hope it would, so I probably should just quit and go back home and get a job and never look into a business again because I'll just fail?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was just one moment. I would say it was like every other day for the first year. Yeah, I think that's probably something that everybody has, and I think it's partly because success doesn't necessarily happen in a linear fashion. So even if you are having success, there's going to be downs where you feel, well, maybe that success was short-lived, or maybe it was just luck. But then there's also the fact that a lot of the time I think we have a bit too much hope and a bit too much optimism, and stuff never quite works out that well.
Yeah.
I remember when I launched Human Proof Designs, I thought, oh, I'm going to sell like 100 websites in the first month, and I'm going to make like $10,000 a month by the end of the year. And obviously it didn't work that way. I think I made like $100 in the first month. And it was really exciting because I made my first sale, and I thought, wow, like I created that money. It's not like when you have an affiliate sale. But at the same time, that was really depressing. So yeah, there's two reasons for it really. Like, one is because you don't necessarily see success straight away, and then the other is because I think, certainly me, we kind of have these this false optimism about how well we're going to do, and then when it turns out not to work that well, it's pretty depressing.
And how did you manage to fight through these bad periods of time, bad every second day, and keep on doing what you were doing?
So what I mentioned it a little bit earlier when I said you kind of build your confidence bank.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what you have to do, really. The first thing you have to do is know that you are going to get there sooner or later. One of the first pieces of advice I had that I have probably is my most repeated piece of advice is, I think someone said to me, you seem to be too hung up on whether or not you're going to succeed. You need to just accept that if you keep going, sooner or later, you'll succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when I heard that, or when I read it, I kind of remember feeling physically relieved. Like, okay, cool, right, so I just need to get on with it. So whenever I felt really down, I kind of reminded myself about that. And I also collected these things that we talked about earlier, like somebody tweeted me, somebody commented on my site, somebody sent me an email saying, I really think what you're doing is great. And you just kind of slowly collect all these things and you add them to your confidence bank. And when your confidence is feeling really low, you can kind of take a withdrawal and boost yourself back up again. And eventually it gets to the point where your confidence is enough that you kind of do stop having these dark times.
Yeah, that's great advice, man. And personally, I'd say that I think those dark times or dark moments, let's say dark moments, will never end for an entrepreneur. You might have a lot less of them, and I mean, not as often, but there's still always going to be setbacks no matter what you do. Because, I mean, unless you're kind of stuck in the same level of business that you're happy with and you figured everything out 100% and just working and you don't want to grow anywhere, which I think kind of depressing a bit because you always have to grow. You always have to find something, to push you forward, to move you somewhere else. And if you do try to make your business grow, or if you try to move forward personally, there's always going to be things that will not work out the way you thought they would. And sometimes it would be like really big setbacks where you would think, you know what, I should just quit. That's a bad idea. But if you do if you guys do what Dom just said and you keep fighting through it and you build your confidence and you remember the good moments that you had in your business, you'll certainly get through it, and you will have those dark moments. Everybody does. There's no way around it.
Yeah, I think sometimes I live in fear of my next dark moment. You know, like when you're riding a really good wave and you haven't felt dark for a few months, you think, oh man, the next one's really going to be big. But yeah, like you say, you just have to work through it, and you have to accept that it happens, and it happens to everyone.
Yeah.
I'm sure the big guys out there, they still have these dark days.
Yeah, and I've had a few people on this very podcast where they share like really bad moments, as in, let's say they're launching this new product and they're already kind of big, people know them, and they are expecting to have like tens of thousands of people visiting their website to buy this new software they created. And basically what happens is right before the launch, or when they click the launch button, every single system they have implemented fails. Like all of them. Imagine your autoresponder fails, your hosting fails, your software itself stops working for whatever reason. There's like this new bug that nobody ever noticed and nothing works. Basically, it feels like the whole business just went bankrupt, right? But they get up and they work their way out, and you just have to keep cold brain, and you have to be like, okay, how do we fix that? That's not the end of the world. Everything could be fixed. So yeah.
That's refreshingly reassuring to know. Like, I don't want to feel happy that this thing happened to those guys, but it actually does make me feel a lot better, because you realize, okay, it's just a natural part of life, and nothing, it's like a bit of a cliche, but nothing worth doing is easy.
Yeah.
So it's the same kind of theme.
Yeah, and I'll give you actually a good example. I was talking with Laura Rotter, the founder of Meet Edgar.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a social media auto posting tool.
Yeah, I've seen her speak live before, actually.
Okay, cool. And what happened with a few times actually with Meet Edgar and many very, very similar applications, what happened is that Facebook somehow did some change, and that change disabled Edgar. And not only did it disable the auto posting, it removed all the previous posts ever posted on Facebook by this software. So you have thousands of clients whose Facebook posts suddenly disappear, even the past ones. And like, just imagine that happens to your software, and like everybody's talking about your software. That's pretty horrible. What they did, somehow they did work hard enough to find this one person on Facebook who they could reach to, and that person helped them fix that issue, and everything went back to normal. It took a few days, but those kind of things happen, and you have to go somehow get through it.
That must have been pretty stressful, especially as Laura's husband is the software engineer behind the business, so that must have put a strain on 24 hours.
And see, that's the crazy thing, that it wasn't their fault. It was Facebook. And it wasn't just them. It was every like Hootsuite and all the other software was the same issue for everyone. And it was Facebook. But try to explain it to your clients, right? You don't want to be like, oh, I know what, blame Facebook, call Facebook support or something. You had to there's so many things that I'm sure they had to figure out how to manage the whole client crisis and how to fix it. So yeah, really, really bad things happen sometimes.
Yeah, I'm just not looking forward to my next big thing that crashes.
Let's hope it doesn't, because it doesn't always go that badly, but it is a possibility. All right, Dom. So I had another question for you, and that's a big one. What would be your biggest and most important advice to any beginner entrepreneur, or even entrepreneur, someone who just wants to start a business and they haven't yet? What would be that one most important thing you would tell them?
Don't wait, just do it. And I know you're probably going to have a million questions and you're not even sure. Like, it's easy for me to sit here and say just do it, and you're there thinking, well, yeah, but just do what? Shall I do this first, or shall I do that first? And the answer is do whatever you think is easiest to do first. Like, don't try to think about this perfect business plan. Just think, well, maybe I want to have a website about this, and then just start that website and then go from there. Because even if that was wrong, you learn a lot from the process, and then you'll be able to do it again better next time. And to use a kind of analogy that might make it clearer, instead of thinking about like ready, aim, fire, think ready, fire, aim. So, just fire that arrow first and then worry about how to get it into the target. Because I'm sure you've noticed it as well. You mentioned it earlier, like the person who asks a bunch of Facebook questions, and there's nothing wrong with that, but then a year later they still haven't even started. If they just started, they could still have asked questions all along the way and they could have figured it out later. But a year later they'd probably be they'd be asking questions like, I'm only making $1,000 online, how can I take it to the next level? Instead of, how do I change my logo, or something simple like that. So just don't wait and don't worry about figuring it all out beforehand.
Totally. Thank you so much, man. This is very solid advice, and I stand by that advice as well. I'm guilty of not taking action soon enough on certain projects, and as you said, in the end, what ends up happening is that you just lost so much time where you could have been taking action, doing things, and asking questions along when you don't understand something in the moment, and not when you're thinking, what if I don't understand something later? And I've heard a really good comparison kind of. Someone told me, it's like, imagine you're driving in like pitch black in a country road. There's no lights anywhere, and you're in like this old car with crappy headlights that only, you have the light for the next 50 feet. Like, you're not gonna stop driving the car because you're like, I don't know what's a mile ahead of me. You're just gonna drive the 50 feet and then the next 50 feet, and you keep on driving like that until you reach that 2 miles or whatever distance. You don't think what's ahead of you all that far. And I think that's a problem with a lot of people when they want to start a business. They think way too far ahead. Like, well, how would I be able to manage 20 employees in my business? Well, you don't have a business yet. Don't worry about employees. And if you get to the point of having 20 employees, I'm sure there'll be an easier way to fight the problem. So, yeah, guys, very solid advice from Dom. Don't wait until you know everything, and don't wait until the conditions are perfect. Just take action right now. Start your business, and then figure out how to make it better, how to improve it, and how to sort out the problems that you think you're having. All right, Dom, before you go, if people want to get in touch with you or they want to buy a website, and I'm sure some of the people listening to this website would be interested in buying a pre-made niche website, where do they go? How do they get in touch with you?
humanproofdesigns.com. And if you like Facebook groups, you can join my Facebook group as well, which is called Niche Site Entrepreneurs.
Niche Site Entrepreneurs. All right, I'll add all of that into the show notes page. Dom, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Thank you for sharing your advice, your knowledge, your tips, your strategies, and everything else.
Thanks a lot for having me. It's been really good.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Extra Paycheck Podcast. As usual, I will be putting up a show notes page at extrapodcast.com/63, where you will be able to find all the resources, links, and other things we mentioned in today's episode. Also, make sure to not miss out next week's episode, which also will be with Dom, and Dom will be explaining how you could build your own profitable niche website. Also, go to extrapodcast.com/iTunes in order to subscribe to the show, and please do leave a rating and a review, which will help the show tremendously. Thank you so much once again, and I'll talk to you next Monday.